Welcome back to another episode of Learning Vue.js the hard way. And what I mean with the hard way is that we are learning Vue.js by simply reading through the documentation, by going through the guide. And what we're going to talk about in this episode is the concept of class and style bindings. So in other words, how to add classes and how to style your elements, how to do CSS essentially in Vue.js. And actually, I sort of skimmed through this chapter before I dove into this, and this is going to be a really interesting one because it seems to me that they've done some really sensible things in Vue.js, or rather, they've made some really good decisions that make it very, very, very easy for us as developers to express templates in Vue.js. And now, granted, I'm not intimately familiar with React or Angular or Ember, so it's possible that all of these things maybe actually exist in those frameworks, or maybe in some of the ideas exist in some of these frameworks. But either way, I would say that some of these ideas are really, really good. And let's just dive straight into it so you can see that. So I'm just assuming that you are, speaking of intimately familiar, I'm assuming that you're intimately familiar with the idea of what classes and what styles are. Now, the point is that we can use this vbind directive that we've been using before in order to bind to the style attributes. So, let's just jump back straight into our code here and let's look at the index.html file that we've been working with before. If you don't recognize any of this stuff, be sure to watch through the series, as I'm kind of treating it sort of as a sequential episodes. But also, if you're sort of familiar with the stuff that's in this file, don't worry if you just showed up specifically for this video. But anyways, okay. So you can see. Let's just search here. Do we have any V? I don't think we have any explicit sort of long form notations using vbind. However, we do have this short form notation that we have here. Right here, we are saying vbind. No, wait, am I doing that? Yes, exactly. vbind the property item to fruit. So this is sort of a component that we've defined ourselves. Let me actually maybe put that on one line, right? Actually, that's a bit cleaner. So we have this, where this is equivalent to saying v-bind, bind the property item to the value fruit, right? We talked about the short form syntax or shorthand notation in another episode. But anyways, the point is that what you can do is you can vbind to the style and to the class properties. So let's just maybe do this, right? Let's open up our page so that we have something to look at. And let's make that a bit bigger. So I don't know, let's take this list maybe. So then that's the UL here. So maybe if I would say that I have a class that's or maybe let's take the top header. Yeah, whatever. Let's take the top header, right? So I have this p tag, and I want to say bind to. I want to say bind to class, to the attribute class, right? So that's the same thing as saying v-bind : class equals, and then I'm binding to something, right? But of course, instead of this long form syntax, we can of course simply say this vbind. Or bind something to this particular class thing. Now, if I put foo here, let's just think about that. Then we're assuming that there is a variable called foo, and I'm assuming that they're sort of gracefully catching this because there's no the thing foo doesn't really exist. So let's just see what this renders, right? Let me try and make this a bit bigger, and then see if you can find foo, and I'll let the cat in. Hang on. All right, so hopefully you can see that we don't have any occurrence of the of foo, right? We don't have a foo class here, right? So that's because this specifically means something else. But okay, let me restart. Okay, it's silly that we just started to experiment with things. Here's the thing. What they're saying here is that style and class works slightly differently in terms of the way you bind them. So if you would just have if you would let's do this. Let's bind the class to something that exists. Let's say full name, for example, right? This probably shouldn't really give us the thing that we're expecting. No, wait, of course it does. Yeah. Okay, I'll stop guessing now. Okay. I'll stop guessing and we'll just do this instead. Here's what I should have said. Okay. They have a special way of treating that, and they have a bunch of different things that you can pass to class and to style. And this is the really ingenious part. So in some sense, this implementation for binding is a very general implementation where you're simply evaluating an expression. But for class and for style, there are some, let's say, hard-coded special cases that you can employ in order to make styles simpler. So the point is that, so like, I mean, you can put an expression here, right? So like if you would say 1 plus 2, let's just, okay, so now we're back to experimenting. Let's just do this. Class, we're binding that to 1 plus 2. What happened here? Hello? Yeah, okay. So then actually 1 plus 2, it doesn't give us. Okay. So what I should do is more like something like this. Let's just do, because, so what I'm saying now doesn't really make any sense. So let's just add another input field here and bind to that instead. And let's just compute 1 plus 2 here instead. That should work, right? Yeah, okay. So if I bind the expression 1 plus 2 to the attribute value, you can see that we get 3 out. Then we're sort of we are out, but like the value or the result of computing that expression is 3. And so you would assume that if I put the class attribute and say 1 plus 2, that I would bind to a class called 3. Now that doesn't happen, as you can see here. If we look at the inspected HTML, we just have the existence of the class attribute, but we don't have any classes bound to that. So it seems to me that would probably mean that, let's think about that. Probably because then, yeah, it's probably like not a hard-coded case, but what I mean is a number doesn't make any sense in terms of a class. So what if I do this? What if I have a string? What if I have like foo and then foo comma plus, oops, foo comma, no, sorry, foo space plus bar, right? That would actually be a valid class. Yep, okay, so that works, right? So if I put the string foo and a space concatenated with the string bar, then that's a valid value to the attribute class, because that's two classes, the class foo and the class bar. Now they're emphasizing in the documentation that this is a bit messy. Like if you want to add multiple classes and even maybe, let's say, conditionally, then you have to deal with this stuff. You have to do sort of interpolation. And yeah, maybe you have this sort of JavaScript syntax where you can interpolate like this, right? It's possible to do that now, right? It's like you can say, let's say full name is one class, and then let's say doe is another class, but actually then we need a space. No, sorry, now I'm interpolating. Full name and then space and then doe, and then we need that symbol, right? I'm not sure if I have. Yeah, okay, so my browser supports that syntax, and then, no, is that actually the. Okay, wait. Yes, exactly. My browser is supporting that syntax, and hence that works in Node. In Vue. So then you can see we have John Doe here, but of course John Doe is not a valid class either, because that's 2 words and not 1. So, but there are all sorts of problems here, right? And so the point is essentially this. This sort of raw way of constructing a string that's the value for a class is too prone to errors. So what they're saying is that, okay, classes are so common, and styles, inline styles, if you want to go that route, are so common that we can't afford allowing people to make tons of mistakes. And it's like, can't afford. Doesn't make any sense, right? That makes a ton more sense to just say, here's a simplified API for dealing with that. And what's that API? Let's jump to the table of contents here, and I think maybe we can see that, right? Because we are in the section class and style bindings, and then you can see here, right? You have object syntax and you have array syntax, and then you have a bunch of other stuff like auto prefixing and multiple values and that kind of stuff, right? But essentially it's about object syntax and it's about array syntax. So how should we specify classes? Well, let's look at object syntax first, right? And what they're saying here is that what you can do is you can say, you can pick an arbitrary class, right? Or you can you can pick an arbitrary class, and then you can determine whether that class should be shown or not based on computing a particular expression. And so the class that you want to render out is the key in the object that you pass as a value to the attribute class. Like, so you're saying, let me bind, so let me just add an object here, right? So like, you're saying, let me bind to the attribute class. And the expression that I want to bind to that is an expression that returns an object where that object has a number of keys pointing to a number of values. Every value here is a Boolean, and every key is the name of a class. So if I say foobar here, or let's say, as they were saying, that's actually a better example. If I say active colon true, and then I'll render this page, you can see that we do get the class active. But if I say active colon false, then I will get nothing, right? Active is not rendered. I will get the class attribute, yeah, sure, but that doesn't really matter, right? But I won't get the class active. And then you can tack on a bunch of classes here. You could say active colon false, let's say, I don't know, I mean, all right, let's say warning colon true, right? Let's save. So then it's not active, but warning is shown, right? And so forth. So you can add a bunch of classes, and then the value here specifies whether they are shown or not. And of course, remember, this is an expression, right? So we should be able to say true and true here, for example, and that should render the active class. It does, right? And we get the active class and we get the warning class. So let me remove the warning class here just to simplify things, right? So this piece is actually an expression, which means we could even do something like, let's say, colon full name, right? Because remember, so it's probably working with truthy and falsy here. And remember that when you're in JavaScript, right? If you have a string, let's say foobar, and you say, is that equal to true? Oh, okay, wait. How do I show this? Oh, sorry, and, right? Or sorry, or. If I say foobar or false, but then I'm gonna get foobar. This always messes me up. Yeah, wait, this is the way I do it. So if let's use the ternary expression. So if I say foobar, ternary expression. So if the expression that yields foobar, if this expression yields true or is truthy, then return true, else return false. Then you can see we get true, right? So foobar, so a non-empty string is true, but if you have an empty string, then that's false. So like we can even make use of that. I mean, I'm not saying that this is a sensible thing to do. I'm just emphasizing that I want to make the connection that you're actually evaluating or you're actually expressing an expression here, that you're binding to an expression, like you're binding the class attribute to some particular expression. And so hence you could even do something like, let's say that active is based on full name, and full name is actually a computed property, right? Because that computed property is in your scope. So since full name will yield a non-empty string, then that should be truthy, which means that active should show up. So if we refresh, you can see we do get active, right? But if we would do something like active is bound to empty string, oh sorry, I have to use those. Sorry, I mean I switched to sort of single quotation marks because we're using double quotation marks here just to avoid escaping. I assume I could have also just said, like, escape the quotes like this. I guess that would yield the same thing, maybe not. No, that doesn't work. Okay, so let's stay away from that. So we should use, if I use outer, or if I use double quotes on the outside, then I should use single quotes on the inside, and vice versa, right? But you can see if I pass empty string to active, then that's falsy, which means that the class active is not added. So then you can put any number of arbitrary classes here, right? And I would assume, like we've talked about it before, that it makes sense for them to make implementations that are general and not sort of specifically hard-coded to a bunch of things. Sorry, I have to stop the cat, hang on. Sorry, the cats just really like to mess up the couch, and it's not cool. It's a nice couch. Okay, anyways, so what I was saying is that it makes sense for Vue to write code that is not hard-coded to specific scenarios. I mean, just generally, it makes sense. If you can write code that's general, it just makes sense to write code that's general rather than code that's hard-coded to a particular scenario. Unless, like, part of your requirements is that you need something which is, like, extraordinarily performant, and hence it must be hard-coded. But otherwise, I mean, generally, I mean, it makes sense, right? If you can write something in the general way, write it in the general way. So I would guess here that for class, they've sort of just said that whatever key that you put here, even if I put like arbitrary key and then say true, we'll get that arbitrary key, right? You can see we get this arbitrary key, which was of course evident, right? Which wasn't evident because we looked at some, okay, these are classes, right? So these are not styles, they're classes, and of course you can use absolutely anything that you want as a class name. And here, notice also this, that we are now using these quotation marks for the key name because we used a dash in the name here. So we said arbitrary dash key, which is not uncommon, right? It's like first we expressed it like this. We said that the key is like is valid, for example, right? Or like is I can't remember what it was, right? But sometimes you have that syntax, but sometimes depending on sort of the style guide that you are working with, or like the way you are expressing things in your team, or I think in Bootstrap actually, right? Like let's look at Twitter Bootstrap. Maybe it's not actually called Twitter Bootstrap anymore. Bootstrap. So whatever. So just examples, maybe. Give me some. No, but those are okay. Documentation. Sorry, just want like one quick example. Layout. Container. Yeah. So here, right? So sorry, font size. So here's an example of a Bootstrap class, right? If you use the framework Bootstrap, then you might, for example, want to use a fluid container, and then to specify that, you have to say container-fluid. And of course, you can't do that if you just say container-fluid like this, right? That fails in Vue, right? But it doesn't just fail in Vue. If you jump into Node and we say var o is equal to what was the name of the class? Container fluid. I mean, it doesn't really matter. If I say foo, if I say the key, or let's say the container, it doesn't matter. Sorry. If I say foo : bar, let's say I'm constructing that object, right? That object is constructible. Actually, I don't even need to say that in a variable. Let me just say foo : the string bar, right? That's a sensible object. And I can even say foo underscore. Let's say foo underscore bar is equal to bar. That makes sense. Foo camel cased bar is equal to bar. That makes sense. But I can't say foo dash bar. Right? That immediately gives me a syntax error. So that's invalid JavaScript. But you can, if you wrap the key in a string, then you can put like anything as a string. I mean, you can put any string, any valid string is then a valid key. So, right? So now that's a key. Of course, then it's tricky to access that because you can't say .foo dash bar because then again, like actually we didn't have a syntax error here. We just had like, oh, sorry, that was because I didn't put parentheses here. So yeah, you can't access it like this. Yeah, you see, it even behaves very strangely. It's like it's saying bar is not defined, but what happened to foo? Yeah, confusing. But okay. So it actually so it actually evaluates it like this, right? It evaluates it as like bar subtracted from foo, but then that fails because bar is not defined. But this is interesting. What if I define bar? Let's say bar is 1, 2, 3, okay, and then I try to run this again. Yeah, then we get not a number because like foo. Right. Because what happens is that we are okay. So if I parenthesize it, what happens is that this is the thing that will be executed. We will take the value foo out of that array, or out of that object, which will give us undefined, and then we'll subtract bar, which is 1, 2, 3, from undefined, which will give us not a number, which is nan. But this is tangential, right? The point I wanted to make is that you can access it if you instead use this syntax, right? Like bracket notation. So then that works. Let's jump out of Node and let's jump back in here to Vue. So, or to our index.html file. So so that sort of works, right? It's like so what I'm saying is that so you can specify these sort of kebab cased keys, these sort of keys that have their words delimited with dashes, but you have to specify, you have to put them inside of strings, you have to wrap them inside of strings, and then they work, right? And you get here, right? Like we render out the class container dash fluid. So pretty cool, right? So you can have like basically any class. Okay, let's maybe switch this back to, let's say, I don't know, is valid makes no sense for this. Let's just do something that's a bit more sensible. What do we have? Like we have a button which is add. So maybe we put a condition on that. So we say class, or let's bind to class, and then let's say is enabled, or let's say enabled, as an object, sorry, and then the key enabled, and then let's say true. Okay, cool, right? Then the button here, sorry, the button here, if we inspect the button here, you can see we have a class that points to enabled. And of course, now we don't really have any styles for that. So maybe let's just add a style here. Style, whoops, style. Yeah, my formatting did not like that. But let's say, so the class enabled, enabled is maybe like has a color of red. I don't know if I can say set a background color of a yeah, this is maybe like that is looks a bit better. I don't know if I can put a background color, but like let's say a background color of black. Yeah, okay, that actually works. So maybe, okay, so maybe I should do the opposite. Enabled is enabled, but disabled, but that doesn't make any sense. We can't disable a button, because then we should just use the disabled attribute and then just use the normal stuff. Okay, sorry, I'm just gonna let's add like a party class that just says that the text is red, and maybe like a text decoration which is an underline, underline, something like that. Let me just line those things up like that, and then and then instead of saying enabled, let's remove this class. Okay, sorry, this is the last thing I'm fixing, and then I'm gonna move on to more interesting stuff. So let's bind to the class here, or let's bind to the attribute class, or let's add a binding to the attribute class, and let's bind such that the class party shows up when the expression true yields true, and of course true is true, so party will show up, right? Okay, so ta-da, now that works. So maybe the background color should be purple or something like that. Anyways, this is completely unnecessary. Okay, so yeah, whatever, let's remove the background color. Anyways, let's move on. Okay, so that's how you can pass in an object, right? That's the object syntax. So you can pass in a bunch of stuff. And what they're saying here then is also that they're making sure all the time that your dynamically bound classes can coexist with any existing class attributes. So if we had another class attribute here, okay, now I have to make something else silly up. I have to make up something more else. So let's just say maybe we have a class that's like, let's say header or something like that, or like head, like let's say title, right? So we have a class called title, and we add that using sort of regular HTML, and whoops. So let's say font. How do I? Weight, sorry, so font weight is bold, right? So what we expect now is that the regular class that we've added here should not override our dynamically or our reactive classes, and our reactive classes should not override our regular HTML classes, which means that we should have both we should have a bold text here that's also red, right? And if I refresh the page here, you can see actually we have that. We have both a bold and a red text, right? So let me actually maybe change this so that the party is the thing that makes it red, and then the title, like the base, the sort of base class added, like hard-coded via HTML, is the text decoration underline. Okay. And then maybe we can put that like this. Maybe let's put these on one line because we are a bit lazy. Okay. Let's refresh that. Okay, so it's red and it's underlined. Okay, that's our title, right? So, or that it's the combination of the title class and the party class, and the party class was added through Vue. And now the interesting thing is, of course, that these are expressions, right? So you can, of course, then access your object, your model object, your data model. So instead of passing true here, I could pass something like, as we looked at it, I could say pass full name, but I could also pass, let's say, party mode or something like that. And then we jump over to main.js, and I'll add a variable to our data object that's called party mode. Again, I want to emphasize that in this example, we've now sort of, we have a bit of a crazy Vue instance, and we have sort of lots of different things going on at the same time. Of course, if we were doing this in any sensible way, which we will do in the end, then we wouldn't have all this crazy madness. We would separate different things into components so that we sort of have control and sort of that, so that cohesion is higher, right? Think about that old sort of maxim. Coupling should be low and cohesion should be high, right? It's like another way of saying is that like mixing different things should not happen a lot, and having things in a nice, clear separation and clearly isolated, that should happen a lot, right? So you don't want to mix different things that don't belong, and you really want to separate things that are distinct, right? That's sort of like coupling and cohesion. Cohesion could also be read as sort of that any particular thing in and of itself makes sense when you look at it, right? It's like, this is a cohesive piece that makes sense as a particular thing. And now for us, that's completely not true, because like we're mixing this idea of a party mode and like some first name and last name and a bunch of fruit, and like if you read this, you're like, what moron wrote this application? Because this, I have no idea what's going on here, right? But that's also because we're just trying out a bunch of stuff, right? So now I've put party mode true as a property in our data object, or in our data model that's part of our options object that's being passed to Vue when we're instantiating it. You can see if it's still red and it's still underlined. So let's go back to index.html, let's stay in main.js, and let's change it from true to false. So we expect the red color to go away now, right? I refresh and it does, right? Because we don't have party mode anymore. Pretty cool, right? And I think the even cooler part is that what you can do, let's see if I'm jumping ahead in the documentation here. So what you can do is that you don't have to inline this object where we say, here we're inlining an object where we say that the key party points to the variable party mode or to the property party mode. But what you could say is you could also say title style, class object data, yeah, exactly, title style, for example. I'll save that, and then I'll go back to main.js, and then I'll add another property which is called title style, and that points to an object which contains party mode :false. So it's like we're just moving that object into the data model, which makes a ton of sense, right? It's like that's probably the way you would want to express that. Okay, hang on, I missed a comma here. Okay, let's refresh that again, and then you can see it still works, but party mode is false. But if we change party mode to true, then that didn't work. Wait a minute. Title style is an object that contains party mode that is true, and if we go to index, we have a class that points to title style. Wait. Title style. I think I messed this up. This is for vbind class. I assume it doesn't have anything to do with this shorthand notation. I mean, that would be crazy, right? It's like v-bind class title style. Maybe it needs to, if it needs to be called something specific, that's a bit, let's say, surprising. Party. No. Sorry. It does work. Okay. My bad. CSS, right? So our class is called party, and I bound, not party, but I bound the property of our title style object was not party, but it was party mode. So if we say party : true, then we get the red color. If we say party : false, then we get not the red color, right? So think about, like, you could of course then use multiple ones of these sort of style objects in your data model for any given component. But of course, maybe you would want to sort of have one per component. But if your component has constituent parts that are not subcomponents, then, you know, maybe you would want to have multiple ones. But probably we should try to aim for sort of one main element that we're styling, and then this could be the styles. These could be the classes for that component. So instead of having like a title style here, it would be like a component style or something like that. It's like the styles for this particular component. Let me just let the cat in. There's a high risk that these crazy cats are going to keep running back and forth now, so we'll see how that goes. But anyways, okay, so that's how you can use, you can put a sort of style object in your data model. And let me just see if I skipped anything here when we jumped forward. I mean, what they're saying is, of course, that this these things are reactive, of course. I mean, clearly you can see this, but let's just do something like that as well. Let's just do this. Let's go to index. Let's add a button here, maybe in the end. Let's say a button that so we bind to click, and then maybe we simply say something like, so I'm going to inline the function now, the method, but again, like as we discussed before, maybe you shouldn't really do that, but if it's trivial, maybe, right? So let's just say something like, let's see now, let's just say like this, right? Let's assume we have another variable. So let's say party is equal to not party. So we're inverting whatever state party currently has. So let's say party mode. Yeah, and actually maybe we could even do this, right? Maybe we say set party mode to, and then let's add a mustache syntax, and let's print the inverse of party, right? So this is not going to work because we don't have the party variable, and actually we do get a warning about that. Like we don't have that in our data model. But let's add the party variable. So I'm sort of saying that maybe this is part of the outer. Yeah, actually, okay, let's make it simpler for ourselves. Title style is, should I make a computed property? This is, I'm just thinking like, yeah, this is a bit tricky because how am I gonna, I wanted to avoid having to say title style in the template, but probably that's the easiest way to do it, because otherwise I guess we could have like a computed property that has both a getter and a setter, where it's like the computed property party essentially like the getter, yeah, but let's just do this, right? The getter returns this dot title style dot party. Sorry, let me actually maybe, no, but let's have that like that. And then the setter is also a function that takes some value and sets this dot title style dot party to whatever value we were passed. So I guess that would work, right? Let's just look at that. Let's refresh. So, that didn't work. So party is a computed property. Let's now look at the error. Console. Oh, okay. I just have a syntax error somewhere. So I missed a comma here every time. Okay, so that seems to work, right? So set party mode to true, we can, is what it says now, and now we can, if we click that, we get set party mode to false. And as you noticed up here, party mode is turned on, so then the text is turned red, right? It's like, it's the most boring party mode ever, but like, I mean, you can see the point, right? It's like that class is reactive, and again, like, it's super important to realize that that is not which is, I mean, fairly non-trivial, right? It's not interfering with any original classes or any hard-coded classes that we've put in the HTML. So if you look at what happens here in the inspector when we turn party mode on and off, the title class sort of remains, but we only add and remove the party class. So that's super good, super duper cool, right? Okay. And so that's what's going on here. Let's look at what's coming up next, right? So after that, yeah, of course here they're saying you can use a computed property, no worries. And okay, actually, haha, okay. So I'm not crazy, right? They said here also, you can also bind to a computed. You can also bind to a computed property that returns an object, and this is a common and powerful pattern. Now, okay, so actually what they're saying is that I should probably, the pattern is to do exactly the opposite of what I did. So I put the style in the as a part of the data model, and then the getter and setter for the particular value in a computed property, and I understand, right? I mean, if we think about that, of course, that is completely reversed. It's the complete reverse of what you should do. Of course, you should say that data is data, and then the visuals are sort of a computed property on the basis of the given data that you might have right now, right? And if you think about it that way, because you might have multiple things that want to have styles that are based on the same underlying data, right? You might want to compute different styles, or you want to compute styles for different things based on the same data. So hence, it's like a one-to-many relationship where the data is one, and then the different representations of that data are multiple. The different class interpretations of that data are multiple. So hence, we should definitely do the opposite. We should say, okay, party is a member of the data model, and it starts out as false, and then title style is a computed property, right? And then we don't actually have to do a getter and a setter. We can just simplify. We can just say that's a function that returns an object. Wait, can I do this simpler? Can I just return an object here? I can't remember. I don't think that's possible, right? Yeah, let's just try this first. So title style returns an object where party is this dot party, right? So this is of course massively more simple. And then we don't have to do any of that shenanigans with the setter for the computed property as we had before. So let's refresh that and see if it still works. Yeah, that still works, right? So this is of course the idiomatic way of doing it in Vue. Don't do it the way I did it. Do it this way, right? Put the actual data in the data object, and then make a computed property that constructs the style. Now let me just think. I can't remember. Like, I can't do this, right? I can't say that title style is an object where where a party is this. No, because that has to be a function, of course. Yeah, exactly. This dot party. Yeah, but I guess it would be something like this then. That would be a string that's like this dot party. But that's, yeah, of course, that's not gonna. I mean, they could have implemented it that way, but hang on, that actually seems to. Why did it work here? No, that works here because of the existence of this thing. We don't actually have styles here. No. So this doesn't work. This doesn't work. Class title. Yeah, exactly. Okay, let me drop that. Sorry, I was just confused about what the syntax was for computed properties, but yeah, of course, it's this way that we do it. A computed property is either a function or it's a pair of a getter and a setter. And it really, like the other syntax that I was proposing now, wouldn't make any sense because it's also like, it's difficult to parse, but also never mind that point. But it would be easily confused with the getters and the setters. So this is the way we do a computed property: a function or a pair of a getter and a setter, where the getter and setter are passed in as or parts of an object. Okay, so anyways, this works. If I save that and refresh, you can see this works. Super cool. What's the next thing? Well, the next thing is the array syntax. And actually, I think we're going to cut, and then we're going to talk about the array syntax next time. But super shortly, array syntax is a way of introducing multiple classes at the same time. Yeah, let's see. I mean, to apply a list of classes, given some active class. So if we pass an array with the two with the two values, or I mean variables in our data model that are called active class, or the two properties of our data model that are called active class and error class. And then if in our data model we have those two things and they point to the string, let's say active, and the string text danger, so this is a way of achieving further decoupling, right? It's like then we don't even have to hard code the class name in here. Ooh, this is like some really cool stuff, right? Because then we don't even have to hard code the class name. We can say, I want to have the class that determines, I want to have the class name that determines activeness, for example. And then we specify that on the model level. And then, of course, we can take that sort of dictionary that maps from the name active class to some particular given class. We can take that from some shared code that we're sharing across components so that we are super sure that we are always using the same name, because otherwise we would have a syntax error, because then maybe we wouldn't have a syntax error, it would maybe just fall silently, unfortunately, because JavaScript is dynamically typed, but then that's maybe TypeScript, right? Or something like that. So maybe you can use Vue with TypeScript, and then maybe you'd catch some of those errors. But that's a way of achieving some really cool decoupling, right? Because then we're even decoupling from the name of a class. Anyways, let's talk about that more properly next time. Thanks a ton for watching. Hit the like button if you appreciated this video. Remember to subscribe so that you won't miss the upcoming videos. And I will see you in the next one. Remember to post something if you're working on something in Vue. Let us know what you're working on, right? It's super interesting to hear what you guys are doing. I'll see you in the next one.